بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حميم تنزيل الكتاب من الله العزيز العليم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب شديد العقاب ذي الطول لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير.
Continue with Surah Ghafir and verse number 19 from Surah Ghafir. يقول الله عز وجل يعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور يعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور. He knows that which deceives the eyes and what the breasts conceal. This ayah, and again, every time we start with a verse within a surah, we need to make sure that we have at least in our hearts what's previously have been recited and explained, because one verse leads to the other. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah sari'ul hisab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swift in reckoning. So don't لا تستبطئوا ذلك اليوم, as he said. Do not think that it's too long or far away to happen. The matter is much, much nearer than anyone can think. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. The hisab, the reckoning, the questioning of the people, the day of judgment is very near. But most people are in ghafla, forgetfulness, turning away from it. And many verses like this, أتى أمر الله فلا تستعجلوا. The command of Allah came. That means it's going to happen. كل آت قريب. Everything that comes is near. فلا تستعجلوا. Do not be in haste. The matter is much faster than what you think. So after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned the people from يوم الأزفة. And before that, يوم التلاق. And al-azifa, as we heard, is something that is very near. Azif al-rahil, that means we are about to depart. This is a word that people would say when someone is relaxing and not getting themselves ready. And the group of the people, those who are traveling, the plane is going to be missed. The bus is going to leave. So the matter is too late. People need to hurry up. So, and describing some of the things in the Day of Judgment for the reciter of the Quran today in this life to act accordingly. And to, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about something that is very near, then we deal with it as very near. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exalts something, we exalt it. And so on. مَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ حَمِيمٍ وَلَا شَفِيعٍ يُطَاعٍ. ظالمين, the wrongdoers, they are the ones that would be facing all of these different horrors and miseries in the Day of Judgment because of their dhulm to themselves, wronging themselves, and the dhulm of others, oppressing others and wronging others. They have no intimate or someone that would care for them, and no one would intercede for them. Then the ayah يعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows خائنة الأعين. So don't think that since the verses talked about that Allah is above His creation, above all the creation, He's over His throne subhanahu wa ta'ala, but He knows what's in the heart of every single person, and He knows خائنة الأعين. He says, what is خائنة الأعين? He says, وهو النظر الذي يخفيه العبد من جليسه ومقارنه. وهو نظر المسارقة. It's النظر خائنة الأعين. الأعين, the eyes. الخيانة, first of all, the definition, he says, النظر الذي يخفيه العبد. The look that a person would hide from the one that sits next to him, from his jalis, from the one that sits with him, ومقارنه, and his qarin, his companion. وهو نظر المسارقة. المسارقة, stealing a look. So when a person steals a look without people around him, would recognize that he saw what he was not supposed to see. Because the word al-khiyana, kha'inat al-a'yun, kha'ina, from al-khiyana. Al-khiyana is when someone is entrusted with something and he betrays this trust. So, and al-a'yun, eyes. And he mentioned the jalis because Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentioned this meaning that a man would enter the house of someone else and a woman would pass by. He mentioned it with an example, tafseer with an example. And a woman would pass by and he would steal a look. No one around him, knows that he's seeing her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees him, that he's stealing a look on something that is not permissible for him to see. And Allah knows what's in his heart. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. What's in his heart, he knows that this look is a look of khiyana, is a look of betraying those who are with him. And he knows more that if he's alone with her, what would he do? What would he do of committing sins? Allah knows what's in the heart. So, but the first part, يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ, and this khiyana, a Muslim, is forbidden for him to be kha'in, to be a betrayal. And betrayal, others, is not one form. It goes to the level of, even as it's mentioned, stealing a look. And that comes from, as the ulama, they say, when you go meet someone, you go to someone's house, you sit with someone, what is the first thing that you do? You say salam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What does that mean? You're stating that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you from all harm, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon you, and blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum, that means you already made the covenant between you and the one that you made salam to, that he's safe from you. You're not going to harm him. You're not going to betray him. You're not going to disrespect him. And especially if a person goes to his home, for example, he is safe. That person, the host, is safe from any harm, one of which is the ird, is the honor and the dignity of the person in the house, even as they say to just keep on looking left and right and things like this, but rather a person to observe the proper etiquettes, and to, even as the ulama, they say that when a person enters someone's home as a guest, he does not sit till the host tell him where to sit, because maybe he doesn't want him to sit right in front of a door that is going to be opened. So he wants him to sit in a specific direction, things like this, especially again if there are things in the house to be for a person to lower their gaze. So this is an example, and kha'inat al-a'yun shows the power of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and that's why there is, when we look at things, either a person look, for example, at the signs of Allah, ayat of Allah. Everybody sees the clouds, the skies, things like this, but someone sees it with having tasbih of Allah in his heart. He sees the power of Allah, how great this ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his heart get affected by it, versus someone that is looking at it as if it's a cat or a dog looking at it, not having the effect of it, not being affected by the ayat of Allah. And how many verses in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to reflect. But here specific evil sin that no human being would know except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ. So he knows the betrayal of the eyes, stealing a look of the eyes. وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. What's even more, which is what's the chest or the hearts are hiding. So people might have a camera and they look at the look that gets stolen, a person stealing a look. But what's in the hearts, no one knows except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. What the chest are hidden in the chest, he said, مِمَّا لَمْ يُبَيِّنْهُ الْعَبْدُ لِغَيْرِ. What the abd did not expose this to anyone. فَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى يَعْلَمُ ذَلِكَ الْخَفِيِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that which is hidden. فَغَيْرُهُ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الظَّاهِرَةِ مِنْ بَابِ أَوْلَى وَأَحْرَى. Other than that, if this is the case, then the things that are openly committed, مِنْ بَابِ أَوْلَى وَأَحْرَى. This is an expression that shows, that means it's more even, more clearer, more likely to be the case. مِنْ بَابِ أَوْلَى, that it's more likely to be. And أحرى, that means it's something diligent, something definitely will happen. So these are facts. This is talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is how the day of judgment will be, because this is in the siyaq, in the context of the ayat of the day of judgment. So al-hisab in the day of judgment is not about only the things that human beings saw from one another. We think of ourselves and our actions. Is it only what we saw towards others or in front of others? No, it's وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ يَوْمَ تُبْلَى السَّرَائِرِ. The secrets will be exposed, will be tested. Al-ikhlas, intentions, the tawheed in the heart, the riya, show off, whether a person is sincere or not, being pleased with Allah, sabr, and so on. So وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. Therefore, there's acts of ubudiyah to be acted upon as a result of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and attributes and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاللَّهُ يَقْضِي بِالْحَقِّ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaqdi bil-haqq. And for that, even when someone knows this about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, how can someone turn to other than Allah in this life. It's how strange is when people commit shirk. How can someone associate partners with Allah in his ibadah? As these dead people in their graves, when they go to the graves and they ask the person in the grave, ask Allah for me or this and that, someone dead, and they would ask them, their hearts are attached to them, and they build their religion based on this. Where is that in the book of Allah? When there's not even one verse in the Quran that would hint to something like this. All of the Quran from the beginning to the end is about the hearts being attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. And no human being would know everything except by the permission of Allah. Even the Prophet ﷺ, when he said about two people coming to seek judgment from him, one wronged the other, some dhulm committed, someone did harm or oppressed other, and they both come to the Prophet ﷺ to be the judge between them. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would say to them, إن لعل أحدكم يكون ألحن في حجته من صاحبه. Maybe one of you has more eloquent in expressing his hujjah, his evidence. Two people presenting their case. فأقضي, so I make the qada based on what I hear from both of you. So if I made a qada, a hukm for you, and you know that you're wrong, إنما أقطع لك قطعة من النار. I'm giving you a piece of fire to you. He, alayhi salatu wasalam, he has no fault unless there's wahi. If the wahi comes down, he would speak to them from the wahi. When there's no wahi, he is given the judgment based on what he hears. So when someone gets a court ruling that he is right and his opponent is wrong, but Allah knows that he was betraying or hiding evidences or so, the judge has no blame on him. But it's the blame of the person that lied and hiding the truth and things like this. So that the person would then having the heart only attached to Allah, ubudiyya to Allah. And that's why when the lack of this consciousness in the heart, then people would have so many different laws that has to be written to avoid all of these types of tricks, because human beings they know how to deceive and lie and things like this, and they can hide things from all different levels. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. For a believer, it doesn't matter whether the law is enforced or not enforced. He fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he knows what's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the heart, so he acts according to this. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. These are verses in Mecca. This is how the Mecca Quran changed the hearts. Then when it comes to the ahkam, nobody is going to betray anyone. When it comes to the transactions, buying and selling, even in the salah and dhikr, the matter is already established. Rules, principles that purify the hearts. Then the next ayah, وَاللَّهُ يَقْضِي بِالْحَقِّ وَالَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ لَا يَقْضُونَ بِشَيْءٍ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَالسَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. This is how, again, al-Khaliq versus al-Makhluq. The Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala versus the Makhluq, the creation of Allah. And Allah judges with truth, while those they invoke besides Him judge not with anything. Indeed, Allah is the hearing, the seeing. وَاللَّهُ يَقْضِي بِالْحَقِّ. He says, لِأَنَّ قَوْلَهُ حَقٍّ, because the speech of Allah is the truth. وَحُكْمَهُ الشَّرْعِي حَقٍّ. And the hukm of Allah, the religious hukm, what's in the Quran, what's in the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, haqq in the absolute sense. وحكمه الجزائي حق. The three hukmah that was repeated many times, which you see there in the Quran. The third one is the hukm al-jazai, the judgment in the recompense, in the hereafter. The hukm, who's in Jannah, who's in the hellfire, the levels of reward, the levels of punishment. This is the recompense. Haqq is the truth. So we have the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hukm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whether it's the hukm al-kawni, the universal decree of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed for someone to be created. That's haqq, that's the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed this, the moment of life, the moment of death, whatever is permitted for people, and the religious one and the recompense one. وهو المحيط علما وكتابة وحفظا بجميع الأشياء. Why? والله يقضي بالحق. He's the one that judges by the truth, because his knowledge encompasses everything. Everything is recorded, everything is guarded with all matters. وهو المنزه عن الظلم والنقص وسائر العيوب. So the most perfect with his names and attributes, and he subhanahu wa ta'ala al-munazzah, the one that is free from all deficiencies, from all dhulm, injustice or deficiency or naqs or سائر العيوب, any faults or deficiencies. وهو الذي يقضي قضاءه القدري, and he's the one that judges the qadr. The qadr is by the wisdom of Allah. الذي إذا شاء شيئا كان. If he wills for something to be, it becomes. وما لم يشأ لم يكن. And what he did not will for it to happen, it would never happen. So as we said, even the kufr of the kafir, even the bloodshed, even the evil actions of those who are the most evil, do you think that it happens without the permission of Allah? They do it against the will of Allah? Of course not. Everything is by the will of Allah, but because of this life, which is a trial for the believers to be believers as a result of these trials, and for the disbelievers to increase their disbelief or to repent to Allah. Because the matter is very near. When it's very near, then it makes the hearts in state of tranquility. There is no need for a person to panic too much. The matter is much nearer than a person might think. So he says, وهو الذي يقضي بين عباده المؤمنين والكافرين في الدنيا. He's the one that judges between his ibad of the believers and the disbelievers in this dunya, ويفصل بينهم بفتح ينصر به أولياءه وأحبابه. And he also judge between them by a fath, by a victory that he gives to those who are righteous and those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love. So al-qada here, again, very simple to understand it very clearly, because many people, they ask questions that it shows that we're not reading the Quran well. And of course we should ask questions. The people, they want the qada, the judgment of Allah, that it's going to be in the day of judgment, they want it now in this dunya. He did not create the dunya for this. The qada in this dunya is, here's the qada, the Quran and the Sunnah. This is the qada of Allah. This is what you do as al-haq, and this is batil. As far as the ultimate, even though there is still qada of judgment and ruling and things like this, but the ultimate one, the absolute one, is the one in the day of judgment. So would someone believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would leave evil and injustices and bad things to happen on the face of earth like this without being for the people to be held accountable for their actions? If someone just think of that, that means he disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. He did not create them to leave them like this, but this is what's stated in the Quran. أتجعل فيها ما يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. The angels, they said you would have on it, on the face of earth, those who shed blood and commit evil actions. He says, قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. I know what you do not know. Why? Because the matter is very near, right? And the nearness of it in the day of judgment, the qada, then of al-jaza, the ultimate punishment or the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a result of the actions of the people after the wahy has been revealed to them. وَالَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ. Those who they invoke besides Allah. وَهَذَا شَامِلٌ لِكُلِّ مَا عُبِدَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. This includes everything that is being worshipped besides Allah. وَالَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ. Other than Allah, لَا يَقُضُونَ بِشَيْءٍ. They don't judge with anything. بِشَيْء. That means with anything. Even if what people might think that they make any judgment, no, لا يقضون بشيء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above all. He says لعجزهم, because of their inability, وعدم إرادتهم للخير. They don't have a will for those things that they worship besides Allah. They're worshipping something that is dead, worshipping idols, images. وعدم إرادتهم للخير واستطاعتهم لفعله. They have no will and they have no ability to do whatever they want to judge. لا يقضون بشيء. So why worship other than Allah? This is all evidences after evidences to establish the tawheed of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship. إن الله هو السميع البصير. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is السميع, the all hearer. لجميع الأصوات باختلاف اللغات على تفنن الحاجات. السميع, to all of the sounds with different languages, على تفنن الحاجات, with different needs. And this is, if you as a human being listening to 2, 3, 10 people, and they're all saying things, different languages, different needs, and they're expressing things to you, even if it's 2, we might not even, sometimes it's even 1. So all of these many languages, and every single human being, he has whims and desires and hopes and fears, and those who are making dua and those who are doing evil, all of them is as if they are nafsin wahid, one nafs, as if they are one. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of all. ما خلقكم ولا بعثكم إلا كنفس واحدة. Your creation and your resurrection is like one soul. This is when you think of a sami', nothing is the like of Allah. So something that no mind, no heart can ever comprehend how perfect this attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the same thing with all other attributes of Allah. Al-Basir, the all-seer. بما كان, with what happened before, وما يكون, what's in the future, وما يبصر وما لا يبصر, what we can see and what we cannot see. وما يعلم العباد وما لا يعلمون, and what the ibad, the people, they know and what they do not know. So when someone have the qualities of the human beings, which is very limited, we cannot see beyond the wall that is in front of us, how can they question the wisdom of Allah? Or how can they question the deen of Allah? When this is how the human, this shows the arrogance, extreme arrogance, on someone that doesn't even know how to protect his own self. So, and the ayat always gives us this meaning, that how the ayat talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how it talks about the creation of Allah, for people then to humble themselves and to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone with submission, and to have the yaqeen and the certainty in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised. Then قال في أول هاتين الآيتين وأنذرهم يوم الآزفة. The previous ayah وأنذرهم, the day of الآزفة, the day that is very near. ثم وصفها بهذه الأوصاف المقتضية للاستعداد لذلك اليوم العظيم لاشتمالها على الترغيب والترهيب. Then he subhanahu wa ta'ala described it with these descriptions, that المقتضية, this is the action now, that these descriptions, this is the characteristics of the day of judgment, then by necessity means what? For a person to prepare himself for this great day. Never to be in ghafla, or to turn away from preparing oneself for the day of judgment. لاشتمالها على الترغيب والترهيب, because it has targhib. You're being encouraged to do certain things and being to bring the fear of other things. So وأنذرهم يوم الآزفة. So even the name of it, إذ القلوب لدى الحناجر كاظمين, the hearts will be by the throats of the fear of Allah. ما للظالمين من حميم ولا شفيع يطاع, describing these details. And then the next ayah, briefly inshallah, أولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين كانوا من قبلهم. And it's all connected. كانوا هم أشد منهم قوة وآثارا في الأرض فأخذهم الله بذنوبهم وما كان لهم من الله من واق. Have they not traveled through the land and observed how was the end of those who were before them? They were greater than them in strength and impression on the land, but Allah seized them for their sins, and they had not from Allah any protector. And ذلك بأنهم كانت تأتيهم رسلهم بالبينات فكفروا فأخذهم الله إنه قوي شديد العقاب. Is the most just. This is after the messengers came to them. So he says briefly in the tafsir, يقول تعالى أولم يسيروا في الأرض, have they not traveled through the land? If a person did not travel physically, at least to travel with your heart. And we have the ability, meaning to see, to look at the nations before. أي بقلوبهم وأبدانهم, with their hearts and their physical bodies. سير نظر, not any traveling for people to be in ghafla and forgetfulness. سير نظر, the sayr, the traveling of nazar, reflecting. واعتبار, taking the lessons. And الاعتبار, you come across. You see what happened to a nation before and you apply this on the present time. وتفكر في الآثار, and to reflect upon what they left behind. فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم. So they would see what was the consequences, what's the end of those who were before them, المكذبين, those who denied the truth. فسيجدونها شر العواقب. They would find it to be the worst of any outcome. عاقبة الهلاك والدمار والخزي والفضيحة. As then after that the story of Fir'aun will be mentioned. The outcome of destruction and disgrace, exposing their evil actions. وقد كانوا أشد قوة من هؤلاء في العدد والعدد وكبر الأجسام. They were, these nations before, أشد قوة, they were more stronger in strength from those who are present. And we can say the same thing about those who are living today. Every nation, they think that they are the strongest ever. No, humanity never seen something like this. Who knows? Allah knows best. في العدد والعدد, in the numbers and in their equipments. العدد is numbers, العدد is the عدة, is what they prepare for, is the equipments. وكبر الأجسام, and their strength of their bodies. وأشد آثارا في الأرض, and more آثارا في الأرض. They had and more stronger in their effect on the face of earth. الآثار is what you leave behind. من البناء والغرس, from building and what they planned. as the story of Pharaoh has come till today, all of what they've built are very clear to the people. They even don't know how they build such very mighty buildings that stands throughout these thousands of years. When you have even with the people they have now, they cannot build something the like of it. So آثارا في الأرض من البناء والغرس، وقوة الآثار تدل على قوة المؤثر فيها وعلى تمنعه بها. This is a very important principle. When you have al-athar is the traces, is what's left behind. If it's strong, that's an evidence that this to show the strength of the one al-mu'athir is the one that made these effects. And how he was mighty and strong, because it stands for a long period of time after a person dies. The same thing with a'mal, actions. The longer it stays, the stronger that was at their lifetime. The same thing with physical aspects of things, and things like that. أثارا في الأرض. فأخذهم الله. So with all of that strength, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seized them, punished them بعقوبته, by the punishment of Allah, بذنوبهم, because of their sins. حين أصروا واستمروا عليها. When they were persistent and they continued to do it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. إنه قوي شديد العقاب. That indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is قوي, as the next ayah, ذلك بأنه كانت تأتيهم رسلهم بالبينات. That is because their messengers came to them with al-bayinat, with clear evidences. Even with sins, when people commit sins, they are not to be punished till the message reached them, that this is a sin, this is haram. You're going to be punished if you continue like this. فَكَفَرُوا. So they disbelieved in the messengers and disbelieved in the content of the message. فَأَخَذَهُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seized them, punished them. إِنَّهُ قَوِيٌّ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala قوي, the most powerful. شديد العقاب, severe in punishment. He says فَلَمْ تُغْنِ قُوَّتُهُمْ عند قوة الله شيئا. So their قوة, their strength, and their athar on the ard, on the face of earth, and what they left behind, all of that did not avail them, benefit them when they faced the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. بل من أعظم الأمم قوة قوم عاد. One of the most strongest of all nations, the people of Ad. Those who said الذين قالوا من أشد منا قوة. They said, who is more stronger than us in power? They would make their homes in the mountains. أرسل الله إليهم ريحا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them wind. أضعفت قواهم, weakened their power. ودمرتهم كل تدمير, and destroyed them all. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention one of these examples from those who denied the truth, Fir'aun and his people versus Musa alayhi salam, and the mu'min of Ali Fir'aun, which is the surah also is called Surah Al-Mu'min, the believer. So again, this is all تقتضي أعمالا. These matters are matters of belief, and the hearts should be filled with exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is more powerful than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the most powerful, and He's Al-Aziz Al-Hakim subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Shadid Al-Iqab. Therefore, then the actions has to follow. Therefore a person doesn't need help from no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, not crying for human beings and begging from human beings that they don't own anything for themselves, but rather to turn to Allah. But rather even the misery of a person when he knows the truth and his heart relies upon a human being. That means then rest assured, if it's correct to say, that the misery will continue unless the hearts turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone with obedience, with repentance to Allah from sins, to return back to the ways that it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhu. That's why the Quran, there is no more books to come. This is the guidance is well laid, established in the book of Allah, and what's left is not to turn away from it, but to turn to it, to memorize it, to understand it, to reflect upon it, and to act upon it. And as you see here, the actions that is required from the verses and the surahs that were revealed in Mecca, because oftentimes we say there was not too many ahkam in Mecca, there's not too many rulings. These are heavy ahkam. These are heavy rulings with a'mal al-qulub, with the deeds done by the heart, with relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. These are things, this is the foundation of all things. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when they faced what they faced in Mecca, these verses were revealed to them. So that gave them, by the will of Allah, the strength and the patience and the amazing stories that we know about them when they were in Mecca being tortured and so on. Why? Because of the Quran. Nothing but the verses of the Quran and the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, the purest of all, to convey that to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how the actions is to be built as a result of it. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit from what we heard. And we continue inshallah ta'ala tomorrow. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. There is the attendance code is Qada and Hukm. Qada and Hukm is the attendance code. There's a question: after the Fajr Salah in Masjid, can one pray the Salah Shuruq 2 or 3 minutes after the sunrise because of the time constraints? No, 2-3 minutes doesn't count because this is the most time of karaha. The karaha when the sun is rising. So before the sun, after Salatul Fajr, it's nahi, forbidden to pray any salah till the sun rises fully risen, which is the Prophet ﷺ said, qayda rumh, when you put a spear from a distance, which is at least 10 minutes. But 2-3 minutes, if a person has to leave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful, then to leave and then to pray it later, inshallah, but not to pray it 2-3 minutes after the sunrise. Wallahu. Did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made this dua after every fardu salah? La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه له النعمة وله الفضل وله الثناء الحسن لا إله إلا الله مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون. Yes, the answer is yes. This is a dua that the Prophet ﷺ would say after each salah. So maybe this is something that can be done on Sundays, inshallah. But very briefly, it's all as you see the tawheed. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وعلى كل شيء قدير. None is worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The dominion of the heavens and the earth belong to Him, the perfect praise, and He's the one that is able to do all things. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. No might and no turn from one state to the other except by Allah. لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه. We do not worship anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ولا نعبد إلا إياه له النعمة وله الفضل. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the perfect favor and the perfect fadl from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا إله إلا الله. You can see because it's written in English. وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وله كل شيء قدير. It's written here. لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون. لا إله إلا الله له النعمة والفضل وله الثناء الحسن. The perfect praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. له الثناء الحسن مخلصين له الدين. We worship Him with ikhlas, with sincerity, with our religion sincerely done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if the disbelievers, they hate that. And as mentioned before, the disbelievers, the worst thing that they hate is the ikhlas. When someone worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone because they associate partners with Allah. But maybe inshallah ta'ala we'll give it more time because it's something to be said after each salah as the Prophet ﷺ used to say it. No. Anything else, inshallah? One more. If one reads witr near Fajr with intention to read 3 but hears Fajr adhan and changes to 1 rak'ah, then it's okay because of niyyah is not for number of rak'at. That's fine. This is permissible. Even though once he said Allahu Akbar and it's 3 rak'ah without making salam, it can be still continued, even the adhan is called. Because what counts is that you started the salah before Fajr. So, but that's also, it's valid because it's the witr salah that a person is praying, even if he made it only 1 rak'ah now, after intentions of 3. الله أعلم. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.